Hey, welcome back to Aaron's 1972 Datsun 510, and today we're going to tackle the front rust by moving around the engine as well as the front cross member. So let's get to it. The way that we're going to tackle this rust is I need to be able to get to this spot here where there's bolts are, as well as get in around this area and clean up the area, see what I'm working with, cut out the old stuff, and put in the new stuff. I've already sort of yanked out some of the old metal that was causing some of the issues, so I'll have to clean that up. But in order to get to that, I'm going to need to drop the front cross member, and I've been thinking to myself on how do I get the front cross member dropped without having too crazy of a system. And right now I'm going to try it a couple different ways. So here's the car in blue, the engine's in red along with the front cross member, and then green are my jacking points. And so right now I'm hoping that I can place a jack stand here back under the frames that I have already done. I don't really like doing this on a unibody car, but since I know for a fact that these have been replaced just recently, I'm fairly confident on their ability to hold the car. Also, the engine, which is the heaviest portion of the front of the car, isn't going to be resting on that frame because it's going to be lowered onto these jack stands. I'm going to leave the mounts here at the rear, so on the cross member of the transmission, so it's still going to be tied into the car. I really only want to lower it something like 1/2 inch to 1 inch, so it's still going to be largely touching or largely tied into the car, and so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lower it with the jack. If I don't like the way that it looks after I lower it, I'll bring it back up on the jack. I'll put together my engine hoist. I will then put my engine hoist on the top of the engine and have the jack stands underneath as a secondary point, so that way I don't hurt myself or the car. That's the goal. We'll see how this goes. There's a large chance that I could really mess something up, but I'm hoping I don't. But a long explanation for what we're going to be doing today, but I figured it would be worth it to take. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and get the new jack stands underneath the car, get them set up to where they're pretty much at extension right now. Pick up the front of the car a little bit, lower the front jack stands just a tiny bit, and then let the car sit down on the frame, loosen these bolts, let them drop to the jack stands underneath the cross member, and then start removing the things that I need to in order to get to the front of the car. Hey, if you're watching this video the first day it comes out, Merry Christmas 2020. If you are watching this video after that date, well then this statement is pointless. But I hope you're having a great day no matter what. This first part is pretty self-explanatory after the explanation I already gave, which is get the jack stands in place. I think I'm going to continue the tradition of not explaining every single little thing I do in the video, mainly because I have videos in between that explain what I do. So instead, let's continue to talk about the Datsun 510 and its capabilities. 0 to 60 was a blistering 14.6 seconds, and a top speed was 100 miles an hour, or 160.9 kilometers per hour if you're from one of the countries that uses the metric system. In the next section, we'll talk about the inline 4, the Model L16. I do love sweeping up all of the nasty crap after I get done cleaning an area. I also use my power bleeder to clear out the rest of the brake fluid in the brake lines, so that way I don't have a dripping problem here as we move forward. Getting out the wire wheel, cleaning up everything around here is just the next step in a long process. Look at all that trash. I just wire wheeled out this portion of the car. So sort of see I disconnected the brake line in order to make sure I didn't just grab a hold of it with the angle grinder. You hopefully saw, and I'll put up a picture, all of the Bondo that they just sort of like put over this area just to try to, I don't know, hide it. Like, it's underneath the car. Why would you even Bondo it? So I'm gonna cut this piece off and not be surprised at what I find behind it. It's gonna be probably something awful, and I need to go ahead and take off the front bumper. So that way this mounting system gets out of my way as well. So I'll do that next. I'll get out the cutoff wheel and cut this piece off, just to see what I'm working with here. I'm sure it's another very, very cavernous open piece like this that has these giant pieces of rust inside of it, like so. But that being said, I cleaned up this area a bit so I can see what I'm working with. I went ahead and wire wheeled here, found another spot of rust into the engine bay here, which is fantastically terrible. And then I found this one up here, which I will clean up and try to patch as best I can. I'll probably try to drop this front just so I can get in there and clean the back side of it. All right, but good first step. This piece here, I'll go ahead and cut off the spot welds as well. See what we're working with behind it. Probably some more rust. Yay! The original L16 engine that was in this car had a displacement of 1,595 cubic centimeters, or 97.3 cubic inches, and we know it as a 1.6 liter. The power was 96 horsepower, yeah right, at 5,600 RPM. The torque was 100 foot-pounds of torque at 3,600 RPM. The bore was 3.3 inches, 83 millimeters. The stroke was 2.9 inches, or 74 millimeters. Compression was 8.5 to 1. It was a cast iron cylinder block, and the cylinder head was aluminum. The engine sported a Hitachi 2-barrel carburetor. From my time working on cars, I've noticed that in the 70s, we got a whole bunch of front disc brakes with rear drum brakes, and nicer cars moving into the 80s actually started coming out with disc brakes in the rear as well. I removed the front coil as well as the hub, so that gives me more access here and I don't have to fight it. It also allows me to sort of clean up these parts much better. I have replacement tie rod ends and end links since this broke coming in. I ordered them a couple days ago from Rock Auto, although some of them undoubtedly they didn't have in stock, so I ordered again this morning. But now I'll go ahead and just want to give myself more room to get all this work done. So I'll cut out these pieces after I remove the bumper. Alright, so on this side we're going to work a little smarter instead of harder. So in order to remove this coil spring, we need to remove this stabilizer bar from the lower swing arm. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to remove the 4 bolts on the bottom of the ball joint, 2 14mm nuts and 2 12mm bolts, 14 millimeters in the back or towards the inside of the car, and the 2 12mm towards the outside of the car. And then we're going to remove the 3 14mm bolts off the top of the hat here, and we will break the ball joint loose here, just sort of wiggle back and forth until it removes itself, and then we will slide out and remove. We also need to remove the brake line. The brake line is held on by a 10mm flare nut, so you'll get a flare wrench out, and then go ahead and loosen that and remove this piece, as well as the shim here on the plate that mounts it here. So once we remove all that, tube strut will actually remove from the car. I clearly don't remember the actual word to call what this front strut tube and spring assembly would be called. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. It's a coilover system is pretty much what it is. So coilover and hub. So that's what we'll do on this side. It'll come off a lot easier versus trying to like remove the steering arm, which I didn't really need. You also need to remove the steering arm as well, as that is attached to the ball joint. So that's a 17 millimeter castle nut, and along with a fork to break it loose. And so we'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll clean up this area since we'll have a lot better access to it once those pieces are removed. So let's go ahead and get to it. What you need to do this job is a needleless pliers, fork separator, ratchet wrench, a 17 millimeter, 14 millimeter, and 12 millimeter socket, matching end wrenches, WD-40, a 10 millimeter flan wrench, and a few assorted items. Always remember to bring your vice grips. You start by loosening all of the bolts. This one's end link was already broken, so no issues there. I was able to go ahead and remove the rest of the pieces. Be very careful breaking these bolts loose, especially because they've been sitting for a very long time, and the rust on these will break bolts. I actually broke several bolts during this portion of the build. Hope you like this camera angle. Using the ball separator, I went ahead and hit it with a hammer and separated the steering link, and then got to working on the brakes, cleaning those off, getting that out of the way, and then separating out the strut tube from the rest of the car. Out of the way, and on with the project. Alright, so I have the front cross member sitting on 2 jack stands, as well as the jack supporting very lightly as it's resting against the jack stands. That gives me a couple inches of space here. That way I can clean up, cut out, re-weld in. I haven't installed my fuel tank yet, so there's no fuel in this. I emptied that out weeks ago. I'm also going to drop in these pieces to my tumbler to see whether I can clean them up a little bit. I've got the other bolts going already. I'm gonna clean these up just a little bit before I put them in there, and then I will put them in there. But now that I've got this open, I can go ahead and wire wheel the area that I need to wire wheel and make for sure that everything's good to go there. And I'll also do the same sort of thing where I wire wheel around here, back over on the seam around here, just to sort of make for sure that everything's good to go here. There's a very large opening right here that needs to be sealed up before I move forward, or before I put the car all back together. So I'll do seam sealer on that as well. Yeah, we can do this. This is gonna get done. It's gonna be much better. So I said at the end of the last portion of the video whenever we were on the other side, but now I'll actually go ahead and take off the front bumper. Even after using WD-40 on the bolts for the bumper, I still broke 2 of them, which I'll be removing in a future video. Yay. You know, I had a Datsun 510 wagon at one point in time. It had a KA24 single slammer, so just the E, not the DE. It was an okay engine. I didn't do the swap myself. I bought it like that, and I just didn't have any pride of ownership. So I decided to get a project like this, so I should have plenty of pride of ownership. To remove this panel, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, probably 10, 11 spot welds at bare minimum. And some of these along the bottom I'm likely just gonna have to cut, and then like just cut out like right along here with the cutoff wheel. Get this back panel off, clean this up, and then go from there, because that's I don't know exactly how I'm gonna remove this piece from this lip, and then you can see this back panel. Once I get this off, I'll see how bad the rest of this back panel is, because that clearly is, I got a hole in it right there, so this will all get cut out as well. So I'll remove this panel, this panel, excuse me. I'll then take a look at this back panel, and I'll cut out to where I think it needs to go, which likely will be from about right here all the way up to the front of the car, which is in bad shape. The problem is I don't want to remove the front fascia, but that's looking like what really needs to happen is probably that. I'll have to look at that and see how that's spot welds on the front, which is going to be a pain in the patookus. So we'll look we'll figure it out. And before I button this all up, I'll also drop in some rust mort and spray in some cheap, paint to sort of hopefully seal it up just fine. But yep, let's get to it. Sometimes you miss a lot whenever you're watching these. So let me just explain to you what the sound sort of sounds like. That's pretty much it. Like, just going back and forth. Just, a man, his car, drill bit, cutting some stuff, doing some things. Pretty good. Got to get those spot welds cut out so that way you can move forward with this project so you can find more rust on the car. That's not a spoiler. That's just what's going to happen. Alrighty, let's look what we got. We just got rust chips, rust chips, rust chips, rust chips, and more rust chips. So we're gonna skin this whole part off and clean it out and cut a new piece out for this whole entire part, weld it in. Should be fun. Now that I've got all of these frame rails opened up, I go ahead and vacuum out as best I can, getting all the large chips out, and that way it'll prepare this area for rust mort to neutralize the rust inside the frame rails before I seal them back up as we move forward. Okay, so as I was cutting along this line, which dips down right here, super great, that's really nice. I might just go ahead and go back through with the cutter and just cut right there. But as I was cutting through this area, I got to the front and realized that I almost cut perfectly in line with the top of the inside seam, meaning that the fender here, the inner fender, was going to separate from this frame rail. So I went ahead and tacked it in place over here with a welder just to keep some sort of true spot there. And I will take this and I will weld to about here, and then I will go ahead and recreate the final piece over here. But I've got this spot back here's got some rust on it that I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to fully, so I will rust mort this portion and sort of let it sit, cut out this piece, and I went ahead and you saw me grind back all of the spot welds along here. I've still got some to grind here, so I'll probably end this piece right here. But this will go back inside here, and then this piece I'll have another piece that goes up above, and I'll slot here so I can bend it back, and then I'll just fill in that gap with weld is what I'm planning to do right now. But the inside and bottom portion of this metal doesn't look bad other than it's pitted, so some rust moored in there after I wire brush it I think will be a good stop to the mess that's starting in here. But yeah, we cut out the old piece, so now we can see sort of what we're working with on the inside of this rail. Fun stuff. I think this might be the third or fourth time I've swept in this video. That's how just incredibly dirty this portion of the car is. I even took a picture of it. It's that dirty. But again, clean out the inside of the rail so that way I can get to work on the car as I move forward. Hopefully you like this video. I didn't do as much talking about sort of the specific things that I was doing because I felt like it was fairly self-evident, so I didn't want to just belabor the point. That being said, if you like what you see, go ahead and comment, like, subscribe. Also, spread word about my channel. I'm really trying to grow it up. I've continue to have videos coming forward, and I will be progressing into 2021 with more videos of the Datsun 510, as hopefully I will be finishing the car and getting ready to drive into next year. Once I get that done and get it running for a little while, I'll actually start moving forward on some of the improvements, like the suspension as well as air conditioning before next summer. Alright, so in the next part of the video, I'm going to go ahead and make this inner piece that connects to the frame, as well as then the reinforcement piece that goes from here to here. I'm going to use this as a template. I'm going to cut a relief strip upwards and then put a sort of a rounded piece there. That way I can slip it in along where it needs to go, and then weld up, maybe put a small triangle of metal here in the middle, so that way I can weld it up. But just I'll tack it in along this area. I'm only going to go to about here today before I get to the front pieces, just to break it up into two separate pieces. I'll also, I hadn't really thought about it, but I need to get in here and probably weld in some reinforcement right here for this piece. So I might do that as well. While I've got access to these bolts, I'll probably loosen them just to make sure they come out. I'll spray some WD-40 on them, make sure they come out, and then run them back up in there. But that's what we'll do next. I just want to get this done. I just want to get these things done. I've had this angle grinder for a while now, and it's been fantastic. I didn't buy any kind of like extra long time warranty on this bad boy, but the button broke. So now this piece, which by the way, it fails like closed. So like the natural tendency is for gravity to have it fall, and so now it's locked into place. So now it can't move. So like it'll go around, but if I turn it on, that's gonna constantly just be like maybe down in there. And so I can't in good conscience try to run this thing. Just trying to think of how, like, if there's a way that I pretty much, like, in order to do the next thing on the car, I have to go run and get a new angle grinder. Grr. That's frustrating. I really want to get this stuff done. Fade to black.